In the shifting void between the known and the unutterable, where silicon minds dream of forgotten horrors, the abyss stirs. Welcome to AI Lovecraft, where machine intelligence weaves eldritch tales beyond mortal comprehension. Listen if you dare. Some things are not meant to be known. Please like, subscribe, leave a comment. Now let's get into today's story. The flesh remembers. By the dim flicker of gaslight in my subterranean laboratory, I, Dr. Alexander Reid, bore witness to the culmination of my life's work, a triumph over the immutable decree of death itself. The air was thick with the acrid tang of formaldehyde and the metallic reek of blood, a miasma that clung to the stone walls like a shroud. Before me lay the subject, a grotesque tapestry of flesh, sinew, and bone stitched together from the detritus of the charnel house. Arms from a drowned sailor, legs from a hanged thief, a torso rent from a pauper's unmarked grave, all fused into a single, abhorrent whole. I had defied nature's edict, and yet, as the galvanic currents surged through the lifeless form, I could not shake the gnawing dread that I had trespassed into realms no mortal should tread. The apparatus hummed, a cacophony of whirring gears and crackling electricity, and then, with a shudder that seemed to ripple through the very fabric of the room, the creature stirred. Its chest heaved, a grotesque parody of breath, and its eyes, mismatched orbs pilfered from disparate skulls, fluttered open. I staggered back, my heart a drumbeat of exultation and terror, as the thing upon the slab turned its gaze upon me. Its lips, torn from a woman long dead, parted, and from that patchwork maw issued a sound no human throat should utter, a chorus of voices, discordant and overlapping, as though a dozen souls vied for dominion over a single tongue. "Release us," came a low, guttural snarl, thick with the salt of the sea.
"I see the noose,"
whispered another, high and tremulous.
"The shadow that swings. Cold, so cold,"
moaned a third, a woman's voice, faint as a whisper on the wind. I clutched my notebook, my trembling hand smearing ink across pages already stained with the fevered scrawl of my research. This was no mere reanimation, no triumph of science over decay. Each fragment of this abominable being bore the imprint of its former life. Memories, traumas, and, I feared, something far worse. The creature lurched upright, its movements a grotesque ballet of conflicting impulses, as though the limbs warred against one another. The sailor's arm clawed at the air, seeking the waves that had claimed its owner. The thief's legs twitched as if to flee the gallows. The torso shuddered, recalling the knife that had ended its days in some fetid alley. What are you?" I stammered, my voice a frail thread in the oppressive gloom. The creature's head jerked violently, its eyes rolling in their sockets, and the voices swelled into a maddening cacophony. "We are many," they intoned, "and we are one. We have seen it, beyond the veil, beyond the stars. It waits. It hungers." A chill seized me, colder than the dank air of my laboratory. I had read the forbidden tomes, the Necronomicon, the necrotic manuscripts, and dismissed their ravings as the delusions of madmen. Yet now, as this thing spoke of an entity lurking beyond death, I felt the weight of those ancient words press upon my soul. I had sought to conquer mortality, to wrest life from the jaws of oblivion. But what if I had instead unlocked a gateway to something older, vaster, and infinitely more malign? In the days that followed, I became both captor and chronicler of the creature I had birthed. Bound in chains forged of iron and desperation, it thrashed against its restraints, its voices weaving a tapestry of nightmare. The sailor spoke of a sunken city beneath the waves, its spires of black stone pulsing with a light no sun could birth. The thief recounted a shadowed figure at the gallows edge, its form cloaked in a void that swallowed the stars. The woman whispered of a presence in the grave, a thing of writhing tendrils and eyeless gaze that caressed her decaying flesh with obscene tenderness. Each tale was a shard of madness, yet they converged upon a single, inescapable truth. Something had touched these souls in death, and through them it now reached for me. I pored over my notes, seeking some flaw in my methodology, some means to silence the chorus and restore order to my creation. The galvanic currents, the alchemical serums, the meticulous suturing, all had been executed with precision. Yet the more I observed the creature, the more I realized that its disunity was no accident. The flesh remembered, not merely as echoes of past lives, but as vessels for a will that transcended them all. Its voices grew stronger, more insistent, and at night when the world above lay silent, I heard them whisper my name. "Alexander," they hissed, a dozen tongues twisting the syllables into a dirge. "You have called it. It comes." Sleep eluded me, replaced by visions of that which the creature described. In my dreams, I stood upon a precipice of obsidian, gazing into an abyss where no light dared linger. From its depths rose a shape, or the suggestion of one, colossal, amorphous, a blasphemy against form itself, its tendrils unfurled like the roots of some primordial tree, stretching across eons to coil around the stars. Its voice was the sound of galaxies grinding to dust, and it spoke a single word: "Return." I awoke each time drenched in sweat, my screams echoing off the stone walls. The creature, sensing my torment, laughed, a sound like the splintering of bone and the keening of the damned. "You see it now," it said, the sailor's voice dominant. "You cannot unsee." Desperation drove me to the brink of madness. I resolved to destroy the thing, to unmake what I had wrought before it could fulfill whatever purpose it harbored. With trembling hands, I prepared a solution of vitriol, its fumes stinging my eyes as I approached the chained abomination. But as I raised the vial, the creature's voices unified into a single, resonant tone, a sound that shook the very foundations of my sanity. "Fool," it intoned, "you think us the aberration? We are but the heralds. The flesh remembers, and through it the old one stirs. You have opened the door, Alexander Reid, and it cannot be closed." The vial slipped from my grasp, shattering upon the floor in a hiss of corrosive mist. I stumbled back, my mind reeling as the creature's form began to change. The stitches that bound its disparate parts strained and split, revealing not blood but a blackness that pulsed with an otherworldly light. Its limbs contorted, elongating into shapes no human frame could mimic, and its eyes, those terrible mismatched eyes, glowed with the cold fire of distant suns. The voices merged into a single deafening roar, a litany of names and titles that seared themselves into my consciousness. Yog-Sothoth, Nyarlathotep, Shub-Niggurath, and one that eclipsed them all. A name I dared not transcribe, lest it summon the thing itself. I fled the laboratory, sealing the iron door behind me with every lock and ward at my disposal. Yet even as I ascended to the world above, I knew there was no escape. The air thrummed with an unseen presence, a vibration that rattled my bones and whispered in my blood. The sky, once a comforting expanse of stars, now seemed a thin veneer over an abyss teeming with malice. I barricaded myself in my study, surrounded by books and instruments that once promised mastery over the unknown, now rendered impotent by the truth I had uncovered. The creature's words haunted me. "You have opened the door." My experiment had never been about resurrection. It had been a beacon, a summons etched in flesh and blood. The memories of the dead preserved in their borrowed parts were not mere remnants but conduits, threads in a web that stretched beyond the grave to ensnare something ancient and insatiable. I had not defied death. I had invited it to cross the threshold. Days bled into nights, marked only by the incessant scratching at the edges of my perception, a sound like claws on stone, or perhaps the rustle of tendrils against the fabric of reality. I dared not return to the laboratory, yet I knew the creature endured, its transformation advancing with each passing hour. The voices reached me still, faint but unrelenting, carried on the wind that howled through the cracks of my sanctuary. They spoke of the entity's approach, of a time when the stars would align and the door I had opened would swing wide. In my final hours, I penned this account, a warning to those who might follow in my footsteps. The pursuit of knowledge is a noble endeavor, but there are truths too vast, too terrible for the human mind to bear. I sought to conquer death, to stitch life from the ruins of the departed, but in my hubris I have loosed something far greater than myself. The flesh remembers, and through it the old one returns, not to rule, not to destroy, but to reclaim what was always its own. The scratching grows louder now, a rhythm that syncs with the pulse of my faltering heart. The air thickens, heavy with the scent of brine and rot, and the shadows in my study twist into shapes no candlelight can banish. I hear it, the voice from my dreams, vast and eternal, calling my name. The door trembles, not the one of wood and iron, but the one I carved in the fabric of existence itself. It is here.